Welcome. Today in this video we will be talking about how to make a gauge swatch. Gauge swatches are important to be able to get the correct sizing of stitch, especially when you're doing something that's wearable where you want it to come out to be the correct size. So today we're going to learn how to make sure that your stitches are the correct size for the project that you're making. Do remember that gauge is not important for every project and the pattern will tell you. Today we're going to practice gauge using the gauge swatch measurements that are given on the yarn here. So this yarn is saying with a 5.5 millimeter hook, you should have 12 single crochets by 15 rows to make a 4 by 4 inch gauge swatch. I'm going to be using my Oakshire 5.5 millimeter hook today to see if I can get the right gauge. I do gauge shorter with my Clover, so today I'm going to be using my Oakshire. For gauge swatch, you may want to use a stitch counter here. I use it to keep track of my rows as I'm going along. There are also different tools you can use, such as a measuring sheep here. This one will tell you this only has centimeters on here, but some will have inches. I also do have one if I'm doing a 2 inch by 2 inch, which you can do to try to save some time. This is normally what I do when I'm gauge swatching, so that I can see if I meet the 2 inches by 2 inches and I have to make as big of a swatch. But I'm going to show you how to make the whole one today. Or you can also just use a tape measure or ruler to be able to measure your gauge. All of those will give you accurate measurements. All right, so I'm going to turn my little counter on here. So this is telling us that we need 12 single crochets. Now you're always going to want to chain a little bit extra and make some extra stitches, so that way you can measure the middle stitches and you're not cut off by the end, to make sure that you have a correct size of gauge. So I'm going to start by making my slip knot, and I have a video with how to make basic crochet stitches if you do not know how to make those stitches. All right, so it's saying to make 12 single crochets. So I'm going to chain like 16 to make sure that I get the right measurement here. All right, now I'm gonna add one more chain just to make sure that I have enough to make my single crochets. Please excuse the little bit of a messy chain. My Oakshire hooks are newer and I've been adjusting to them. All right, so I'm gonna start off by making 16 single crochets here. You have completed your row, you're just going to make sure that you have however many single crochets you're doing. For me, I am doing 16 just to kind of give us a little bit of buffer in between when we're measuring. So you are just going to keep continuing. I'm just going to put one row on my little stitch counter here. You're just going to keep continuing until you get to 15 rows if you're doing like this kind of gauge. If you're doing a different one, the pattern will tell you what stitch to do and how many rows and stitches you need to be able to count it. So like I said, I'm just using this one that's on the yarn. Each pattern will tell you differently. So it may say double crochets, it may say half double crochets, it may say a certain stitch pattern. They'll let you know if gauge is important. So I will finish these 15 rows and I will meet you back at the end. Okay, so now I have finished my gauge swatch. I did 18 rows of 16 single crochets across. So now we can measure. Like I said, you do want a little bit of a buffer to get like a more accurate measurement so it doesn't get like the crinkly stitches on the edge here. So our ball of yarn does say 12 single crochets by 15 rows. So let's measure that out. Remember, we're measuring 4 inches by 4 inches. So I'm gonna grab my tape measure. I'm gonna start by measuring the stitches. So you wanna get at the beginning of a stitch and go all the way over. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I have 13 stitches in my 4 inch square here. So what that means is that my stitches are too small and I have to go up either half or full hook size. So we're gonna measure and see how the rows do as well. So I gauged too small for the rows too. So as you can see, there are 17 rows in this. So that means that again, either I have to go up a half or a whole hook size. So what I would do again is I would go through this gauge again to see what hook size it would be, whether it would be a half or a whole hook size. So this is why you gauge swatch, to see, because everybody's different. I do tend to gauge a lot tighter than most people do. And I'm just surprised because this is like a newer hook, so, and I'm not quite used to it yet. But I do tend to gauge on the tighter side. And if you were to use your crochet ruler, it kind of tell you the same thing. Since this one is 2 inches, or yes, 2 inches, I would cut those in half. So I would expect 6 inches or 6 stitches within a 2-inch periods. Like I said, starting at the beginning, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then a half. So that again tells me that a whole to a half, depending on how you will count it in there. But again, that tells me I do need to go up a hook size because my stitches are too small. And this is also 2 inches up the side here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and a half. So again, tells me I should have more or less rows than that in my swatch. So I do need to go up a hook size because my stitches are too small. But that is how you check for a gauge, to check for your gauge using a gauge swatch. Like I said, you don't have to do all 4 if you want. You can do the 2 inches. However, most crocheters will tell you to do all 4, especially if you're doing something wearable. I like to cheat a little bit and do the 2-inch gauge swatch. But again, totally up to your preference. See, some people will not gauge swatch at all, but I do recommend it if you're doing something wearable or something that you need to be a certain size. Because like I said, see, I gauged too small. So I would have to go up a half to a whole hook size, and I would gauge again to figure out which one that would be. I hope this helps, and happy crocheting.